Hello fellow Inquisitors, Split Persona here, and welcome back to another Inquisitor Martyr tutorial video. In today's video, we are going to be covering the three main Force Staffs or Psyker Staffs available to the Psyker class. Now, there are two main weapons that the Psyker has access to: staffs and rods. The staff is a two-handed weapon. Basically, that means it takes up both of your weapon slots. The rod is a one-handed weapon, and you can use that the same way you would a pistol, one in one slot, one in the other. You can mix and match those, but it is best to keep them identical. If you're going to use a force rod, use a force rod in your second slot. That way you have access to all of their abilities. Oddly, if you are going to craft these, let's go over here and I'll show you. We're going to go to crafting, and you don't see anything here for rods. You are going to go to melee. And if you look here, melee one-handed, right here we see warp rod. We also see telekinetic rod, you know, stuff like that. So the rods and if we go over to melee two-handed, you'll see that the staves are here as well. So rods and staves are in the melee category for the blueprints when you go into crafting. So keep that in mind. They're not in range, they are in melee. But today we are going to cover the three main staffs. There is the Force Staff, Pyrokinetic Staff, and the Wyrdvane Staff. I believe that is how you pronounce it. Do not shoot me as a heretic if I pronounce that wrong. But we're gonna go over all three of these, and these two are the same. They do come in all the flavors: Mastercraft, Relic, you know, Archaeotech, Relic. So, and they can have, as you can see here, they can have slots, so you can put shards and psalm codes in it and stuff like that. They also come in your holy and demonic versions as well. So if you are trying to farm a particular one, keep that in mind. They do come named. As you can see here, I have two Hand of Desolations, but they are two different types. The name will not dictate that it is a specific type of staff or rod. It will only dictate the bonuses that you are going to, your primary enchantment that you are going to get with it. Not so much any of the other stats. So keep that in mind with that. But yeah, we're going to go over what each of those does, and yeah, I will see you all in a few seconds. Okay, so the first one we are going to cover is the Force Staff. If we look at it, it is going to have Force Bolt as its primary ability. Let's look at that. Force Bolt, long range, piercing, AoE, and armor breaking. Long range, single target attack that deals kinetic damage. So the way this one's going to work is this will pierce, because of the piercing tag on it, multiple targets if you have them lined up in a row. Very good for long straight corridors if you're going down like a ship or an industrial area and you have like large groups of small enemies, you can just line them up and just go straight through them. It also has the armor breaking tag. Basically, it will ignore 50% of the target's armor. That is actually extremely good. Think of this like the Psyker's equivalent of a bolt caster. If I pull out here and I just start firing it, you can see it just fires a single shot. And it actually fires fairly quickly. And as you can see, here we have some enemies coming in. It does do decent damage, but you look, it damaged both of them when they were together like that because of the piercing tag. So if you have multiple enemies lined up, or you have a group of them even, it will deal enough damage in that small area to splash that AoE effect around and just wipe out groups of enemies. It's actually a fairly decent weapon for the Psyker. I would definitely say if you can get a very powerful one with good enchantments and everything else, go for it. This is definitely a very solid staff to start with. Are there other ones that you can do from the other three? I would say they're all about the same. It's all going to depend on your playstyle. This one is extremely good for long hallways. It does have one drawback. It does not deal a lot of damage to cover, and it is stopped by solid objects. So keep that in mind when you're trying to get something. If there's a cover and they're behind it, it's not going to go through. So that is the 4 staff. Next, we are going to be moving on to the Pyrokinetic Staff. Okay, so we're going to look at the Pyrokinetic Staff. This one has Pyro Blast, long range, knockback, vulnerability, heat, high suppression, area effect, AoE. Long range area attack that deals heat damage. So this one's going to function a little bit different than the last one. Excuse me. It does have the added benefit of having knockback to it. It does not have the armor breaking ability. So keep that in mind. It will not do armor breaking or anything like that. However, because of the heat vulnerability, if you have a heat build or a fire build, this will come in very handy. It does deal a lot of suppression, and it does have a very, very good AoE. So the way this one works, it's not a bolt. It is just an instant. Basically, think of it like you're opening like a little wormhole. If there's cover, you can target behind the cover. So let's go find a few enemies up here. And hopefully some of them are... Like, if I do that, it'll just instantly wipe out that whole group of barrels because of the AoE. Okay. You can see the knockback already kicking in, hitting all these enemies here. And as I said, it is fairly powerful. And it is knocking back all those enemies, including the higher level ones. So this is actually a very strong weapon. The biggest thing I would say is the fact that you can go and target behind cover. If an enemy is like hidden or something like that, and you can't get an angle with, say, you know, the 4 staff, this would be a good weapon to use if you're preferring something where you're not using a projectile staff. This will actually allow you to get behind the cover and actually hit them without having to worry about missing shots or destroying the cover or anything like that. This actually works extremely well for dealing cover damage, for disrupting enemies with the knockback. As you've seen, it was even dealing with some of the larger enemies with knockback. As long as they're not immune to knockback, it will stagger them, which, when you're being swarmed or anything along those lines, it helps out tremendously. So that is the Pyrokinetic Staff, and we are going to move on to our last one. Okay, so we're on the last one, and again, I apologize for messing up the name. I know I'm going to. This is the Wyrdvane Staff. Again, I apologize. Don't shoot me as a heretic for not knowing how to pronounce it. This one's a fun one. Wyrdvane Seekers. Long range. Vulnerability, warp, better criticals, single target. Launches 3 homing force bolts at the target, dealing warp damage. So unlike the last staff that dealt heat vulnerability, this one will deal warp vulnerability. It also deals a lot better critical hit damage. So if you're going with, instead of a fire-based or a physical-based build, and you're going with a critical hit-based build, this would be the one you're going to want to use. This is also single target only. You're not going to have any AoE with this or anything like that. However, this is a very visually fun and satisfying weapon. And let me just show you exactly what I mean. It just launches little homing bullets, and just even the sound of it . I love the sound that it makes. So let's go find some enemies. Up here where they are. Let's see if we can't lure 1 or 2 down. Okay, let's hit them. As you can see, it does deal quite a bit of damage. Let's take out this Wraith Guard. And it will go and target them surprisingly well. Like I said, it's visually satisfying. It is extremely fun to use. It does do the warp vulnerability as opposed to heat or physical. So if you're doing like a warp build or, like I said, criticals, this would be the one you're going to want to use. Also, if you're just looking for a fun weapon, like this is one of those weapons. You just take it out and you just go have fun with it. Just the sound and just watching the little homing bullets just fly off into the distance. They're just fun. It's just fun to play with. I love this type of staff. It's just a fun one to play with. Like I said, it's a good staff. It's not necessarily maybe the most powerful, but if it's done correctly with a good build, you can make it extremely good. The better critical damage, exceptional, if you have a good critical build. Psykers aren't known for criticals, as opposed to dealing warp damage and, you know, AoE damage and things along those lines. Fire damage is more of a Psyker's bread and butter with the one class they have, so the Pyro Staff is definitely a good one to have. As far as, you know, skills you can take, there's a blessing that will increase your fire rate with any Psyker weapon. That includes these. So if you want to just lay waste to enemies, a good suggestion is to get the blessing. As soon as you start in the mission, activate it. Make sure it has the runes to extend the duration and give you, you know, energy shield or whatever else you need to survive and give you a little bit of survivability, you know, the extended duration, the less energy reserve and stuff like that. Activate your blessing and you will be firing, I believe it's like 25% faster or something like that with that blessing. But it makes the stabs so much better when you're actually using them. It's fantastic when you combine a blessing like that with these staves. And combining blessings with the stabs is how you get the most damage out of them. I believe you can activate up to 3 blessings maximum. So if you, like I said, if you do correct builds, these Psyker weapons, these staves, are really powerful. The other thing that they do is, if we look at this here, if you look down at the bottom there on the right there, it says warp heat, and it says -4 per hit. Your Psyker weapons, when you use your Psyker abilities, you generate warp heat. Your Psyker weapons will cause your warp heat to deplete and bring it back to safe levels. So you're always going to want to have Psyker weapons equipped just to drop your warp heat back down. And these things actually deal it fast enough, if you have the right blessing and everything, that you'll never really have to worry too much about warp heat if you balance it out correctly. So yeah, that is the Psyker staves. Like I said, fun to play with and stuff. If they're built around your character correctly, they can be extremely powerful. And the Psyker does have access to the rods, which are the single-handed versions of these. The little smaller dual-wielding capable ones. But that'll be another video that we'll do. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like. If you have any comments or suggestions, you know, write it down below in the comment section. And I will see you all in the next episode. Have a good day.